first and foremost, let me state my position, right, in this entire topic. I, self-appointed, am a person in the property industry who represents movers. Okay? I've supplied products to estate agents for 22 years now. All the big brands, lots of one-man bands, everything in between. I've seen it all. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. I really have. And my goal with BestAgent, in fact, my goal 20 years ago when I started this industry, was to try to bring about an improvement for movers. Wasn't interested in helping estate agents to start with, right? Yeah. But by providing agents with technology and tools that improved it. And the first thing I did was invent the one-stop photography floor plan service, and it took the time to market from 3 or 4 weeks down to 3 or 4 days. Yeah. Like we were coming with datagraphy. Everyone said it couldn't be done. Oh, you can't have floor plans done by the same as a photographer. We did it. We invented it. It's now pretty sort of standard. So, in this discussion, consider me a representative of the collective of people who consume. In particular, first-time sellers, right, or first-time private landlords. People who need to either sell their home or rent their home for personal reasons, not buy-to-let people. Yeah. People who are moving abroad. Yeah. Emotion and so on. Yeah. Maybe for whatever reason they need to rent out their home. It's not that they don't even have a choice. They've got to move somewhere, but they don't want to sell it. They want to rent it out. So first-time sellers or first-time private landlords who make up in the sales sector. That's the majority. I have been objectively studying this industry for 20-something years, and when I say objectively, like, I can see that agents and movers behave as well and as badly as each other, right? There's shocking things done by both sides, and there are people who behave really well on both sides as well. Yeah. And I've seen what happens when it goes well, and how outstanding the result can be for both the mover and the agent, and vice versa. And but I'm now looking at it at a macro level to go, okay, so according to that Jeffers report, last time there was an actual study done about how many people instructing an agent actually sell with the agent, and their number was 48%. Yeah. Right? If you are a mover, that's pretty poor odds as an actor. Because not only you maybe missed the market, you've missed the new house you want to buy. If the
well, you mean that 52% of homes are sold by the second agent?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And what a waste of everyone's time. Yeah. What a waste of the first agent's time.
That is, don't you? Yes, because the first agent overvalues to get the listing, generally, and then as a consequence the property doesn't sell, and therefore they run out of the sole agency. The consumer then goes to the second agent, who actually, because he can say, we haven't sold for 15 weeks, I'll tell you what the problem is, Mr. Smith, it's the fact that you've overvalued, so let's chop the price. I bet if you actually looked at the amount of properties that go to the second agent and also have a price cut, that would be significant, and that's why they sell. But you're right, they do miss the sweet spot, because by that time, 14, 16 weeks down the line, buyers are thinking, oh, I've seen that for a while, I wonder what's wrong with it.
It's jaded goods, isn't it? So, funnily enough, we did an incredible experiment recently. In fact, the experiment is about to exchange, possibly this week, where someone who works with me wants to sell their 3-bedroom semi-detached house in Somerset, in a town, and I said the only way to be sure you found the best person to sell your house is to consider everyone. So she telephoned 18 estate agents that covered her area and asked them for the email address of the valuations manager. Yeah. So I'm selling a 3-bedroom house in this town, and some of them were like trying to get her details on the phone right now. She said, no, I'm going to email you all my details, and I'm emailing all the agents. So right up front, it's like, I'm emailing 18 of you. Yeah. Feel free to ignore it, but I'm emailing 18. And everyone who responds is welcome to a valuation. So in the email it said, I'm not signing any time period. If that's not okay for you, don't worry about responding to the email. So 11 agents responded and said, we're fine with that, and we're fine that you're going to this many agents, and we're fine to come and meet you, do an appraisal of your property, and present our services to you, even though we know that there are however many, up to 18 coming. Yeah. In the following 48 hours, she met 11 of them. The valuations ranged from 240 to 275, and one of them was like 275 absolute tops.
So that's about a 15% spread.
The one who ended up being instructed actually said, I don't know how much we'll get for your property. I don't know. It depends on lots of things, but what I do know is I know how to find out what is the maximum price.
Yeah.
Here is my strategy, 1, 2, 3. And it was a very cool one. She said, first of all, I will show it before it hits the market to some buyers I've got registered who I know are looking for a house like yours.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to tell them the price.
That's what POA, price on application kind of.
No. She said, I'm going to ring them up and say, this hasn't come to the market yet.
Yeah.
I'm calling you, if you'd like to
Just
view
have
it
a look.
before it goes public, to have a look.
Yeah.
That was fascinating. And I think 3 or 4 people were round immediately. She said, and 1 or 2 of those offered. She said, thank you for your offer. We're now going to put it on the market and give it 7 days and then do an open house. The open house didn't happen, but I think there were 13 viewings in the first week. And there were 4 or 5 people bidding against each other.
Yeah.
And all of the bids were on the higher end. And one of the buyers said to her, we want this house. She said, well, all of the bids are coming in over asking price. They said, how much? She said, I can't tell you that. If you want the house...
So at that point they had put a price on it, had they?
Yes, they marketed it at... it was based on the initial reaction to it.
Yeah.
They marketed it at I can't remember actually, it was 265 or 275.
Okay, so pretty much at the top end of the original valuation range, yeah.
All the offers came in over asking price. Right? The lowest offer was above asking price.
Yeah.
And the buyer that said, me and my husband, this is the perfect location, it's the perfect property, it's been done up, we want this house. And she said, well then, I recommend you bid as much as you're prepared to pay for the house.
Yeah.
And
then add a bit. Yeah.
It sold for 300. Mortgage survey done, mortgage offer approved.
But we should say, because if people listen back to this in a year or two,
extraordinary market
it's been
conditions.
the best market ever in history.
Yes, it has.
2021.
But to be
best
fair,
market ever.
she was the only agent that didn't put a maximum price on it.
Yeah.
She said, we'll find out how much you can get.
But even if
by
an
getting
agent
a piece
had
of glass.
priced at 275, I mean, what I say to clients is, whatever we price it at, the market will find its own level. So if you overprice, then you're not going to get people look. Because if you priced at 310 in your scenario, people think, well, there's no way you're going to take an offer of what it's worth, so I won't even bother looking. However, if you price at 275 and you get 2 people interested, then a good agent should be pushing both buyers up to over asking price. So actually you find the market finds its own level, and it would then probably have sold for the same amount. I mean, what you're describing is almost the Australian way, which is kind of sale by auction, by tender.
I worked with agents in Sydney for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and look, I think it works for the seller because the market does find its own level, and ultimately the best price will be achieved. I do think it's only in a seller's market though. I mean, that wouldn't, in a buyer's market, be the opposite.
But the point that was interesting about this is that actually, even though all the agents knew how strong the market was, all of the ones that did put a value on it undervalued it.
Yeah.
Which is not what I expected.
Yeah.
Right, number one. Number 2, I gave the seller a specific question to ask every single agent. And it was, what will you do that none of the other agents will do that will get me the best price?
Yeah.
And 8 out of the 11 had nothing. Oh, well, we'll put it on the portals and we'll send it out to our email database. And
Just like everybody else.
and she said, no, my question was, what will you do that no one else does? Because you're all going to do that.
Yeah. So will you be open 24/7 so that you can take advantage of every inquiry and do viewings out of hours? You don't miss an opportunity. Will you play buyers off against each other, even telling them, actually, I've had an offer at 275, so that you can then end up with an offer from the next person's higher. And you do that. It might not be very good for the buyer, but the agent, of course, let's be clear, is legally obligated to the seller. So they must get to the best price and act in the best interest of the seller at all times. So the key is that the agent must be prepared to play buyers off to the benefit of the seller. Most agents don't do that. I mean, I've seen loads of scenarios where, 15 viewings on a property, and by the time they get to the 4th or 5th viewing, they cancel them all and say it's sold. Well, I haven't even looked at it yet. I might have paid 40 grand more than asking price. Sorry, it's sold. Why? This comes down to the crux of, and we should explore this because this is, you're going to ask me a question I think later, which is why has the estate agency and property transaction process not improved in 30 years? I don't want to jump the gun, but you were going to ask me that question. And basically the answer to that is that estate agents are not incentivised to be good enough, as in individuals. I don't mean the agencies, the guys that are charging 2% of Foxtons, or the businesses that are charging, as Connells Countrywide, whoever, 1.5%. You will never get the best performance out of an individual in that business if you're paying them utter peanuts. And when I say peanuts, we're talking about the average commission in the UK to an agent being 5% of 1% of the average price of the property. So let's work that out. 270 grand, 1% is £2,700. 10% is 270, so it's £135, less tax, less national insurance. So the average agent in the UK in commission is earning about 80 quid for conveying a property at £270,000. No wonder the experience is crap.
I'm in total agreement with that.
You've got to pay agents as individuals what they're worth, and this bloated estate agency process, which is cars, branches, photocopiers, head office, and so on, where they're taking literally 90-95% of the revenue per transaction, that has to change. And look, then we get onto the self-employed model, and I'm not here to fly a kite for them necessarily.
No. But let me stop you, because the three out of those 11 agents that had an answer was a very specific strategy that was unique to them, and that they delivered with confidence. It was like, no, this is how we work, this is different, this is what we do. And all three of them also referred to specific individual buyers that they knew. Not, oh, we've got people lining up to view this property, general unknown people. No, I know someone who lost out on a house last week, and they could move it. I'm going to ring them first. And
so it had a ring of truth to it for a change.
Well, this is the point. This is the point. But what I know, having worked with agents for a long time, is that the agents that take the time to invest in getting to know those buyers up front, so that when they go on evaluation, they can tell that story, that's much more time consuming. It costs more to do that. So, why, let me ask my own question here, right? I'm going to ask you, what are the biggest contributing factors to the ever worsening problem, or the experience, ever worsening experience for people selling houses in the UK? Number one, if you search the media far and wide as a first-time seller for the question, how do I choose an agent? The advice is the same everywhere, and it's crap. It's pick three. It doesn't say which three, it just says pick three. Effectively, the advice is,
it could be those beginning with A, B, and C.
Well, they say, look at who's got the boards up. Okay, that's a flawed strategy, because sometimes the people with the most boards have the highest fall-through rate. They're brilliant.
And also they're the bigger agents, and they're more likely probably to treat you like a number.
Yeah, exactly, right? So sometimes it's for the right reason, sometimes it's a strong independent who actually does sell most of the stuff, but it's not a reliable reason to call agents. Number two, look at their Google reviews. Well, that's just, everyone knows the reviews are manipulated, and just because one person had a great experience doesn't mean it's the right agent for you. Because it's a personal choice. So, and then ask for recommendations and referrals. Well, that's a terrible idea. Unless you're asking someone who's just sold a house just like yours and had a great experience, then yes. But if it's your Auntie Glad who sold 10 years ago to her mate's son...
It also might be the 1 in 10 that had a good experience. You're never going to find the 9 in 10 that had a bad experience with that agent.
Again, it's an unusual thing, because in most other industries, you can ask friends for recommendations to local businesses. It doesn't work in agency. It doesn't work, because it depends on your property, your circumstances, so many things. And that's what the media always says. In fact, I called out Graham Norwood on this, because he gave this advice in last weekend's Daily Mail, how to choose an agent. So, Graham, no. And you should know better than this. This is not good advice. It's the same advice being trotted out by the media for 30 years at least.
Because it's been reread and regurgitated for decades.
And has it ever resulted in consumers making a better choice? No. So that's reason number one, is the poor advice from the media, which is basically pick three at random. But the reality of their advice is pick three at random. You pick three at random, and there's on average at least 15 to choose from, right? There's an 80% chance you're missing out on the right agent. You pick 3 out of 15. You've got a 20% chance that by luck one of these three will be a good one. Next problem is the entire lead gen industry creates an unearned advantage for agents who spend the most on lead gen. So consumers tend to ring whoever is paying for that lead, whether it be Google Ads, whether it be buying banners on Rightmove, whatever they might be doing, right? People will tend to, they think they're picking 3 at random. It's not random.
No.
It's the 3 that they've noticed the most because of
They
whatever
spend the most
lead gen, whether it's a lead or whatever it might be. Those, and generally speaking, larger businesses, you spend huge amounts of money on just churning out awareness so that you're the one that gets picked as one of the 3.
Yeah.
Right? Again, there is absolutely nothing to suggest that the people who spend the most on lead gen, another example, right? Agents who pay for a product like Home Search. Any agent can pay for Home Search. It does not mean they're going to be any better at selling your house.
No, they're just marketing them.
But it's like, but the consumer's like, ooh, looks nice. Yes, but he might be a shit agent. Shit agents can. Home Search is a nice product, right? It's not a reason to instruct an agent.
Yeah.
But of course, the first time seller doesn't know
No, so the upshot is the worst agent can spend the most money.
Exactly. Automated valuation tools. I mean, what a load of bollocks.
Yeah, but that's just lead gen. That's all they're for.
And it's counter to the interests of the movers. Because everybody who has one of those on the websites knows. First time sellers, first thing goes, what's my house worth?
Well, have you seen recently On The Market, who of course, as a property portal, pledged not to have any tools on their site because they wanted it all to be agent-led. Jason Ted, the new CEO, has changed all that, so he's now trying to catch up and compete with Rightmove and Zoopla. Basically On The Market are the same as Rightmove and Zoopla as far as I'm concerned. He's added an automated valuation tool onto his site. Have a look at what people think of that automated valuation tool. They absolutely panic. As in, it's inaccurate,
They all are.
Yeah, and so no, it's doing On The Market huge damage because people think, well, I don't want to use On The Market or one of their agents because they're all undervaluing my property. Oh, I'm not going to, it's so counterintuitive. But On The Market think that everyone's putting in their email address, we can then sell or give that email address to an agent. That then is a hot buyer, but by the time you go back to that, a hot seller rather, you go back to that seller, you're tainted.
Yeah.
You know, I've got your inquiry from On The Market. No thanks.
Yeah.
It's completely counterintuitive.
And so smart, any kind of online valuation tool is nothing other than a trick to get your contact details.
Yeah.
Well, that's a shitty way to get off to a relationship start, by deceiving people into giving you their contact information. So that you can ring up, and then, one of the best known valuation tools. I mean, I like the people behind them are great people, and they've got good businesses and whatever, but it's not helping the consumer. It's actually making the consumer's decision-making process harder and worse.
Yeah.
The most effective ones are saying, 18% of the people who give you their details will turn into a valuation. So 82% don't want to hear from you.
Well, it also means that, typically 50% of valuations come on the market. So out of all those leads, only 9% of properties will actually list, and you'll probably sell half of those. So actually only 4.5% of those leads turn into money. 4.5%.
So this is an example of why I think lead gen is a dirty word that should be spat out, because as far as the movers are concerned,
yes,
it works against their interests at all times.
Yeah, and an agent should be very suspicious about leads. So the main portals, by whom I mean Rightmove, Zoopla, On The Market, have started to manipulate and harvest leads that they call leads that are not really leads. So drunk people at 3 a.m. looking at £2 million houses just in case I'm in the lottery. And then they click through to Rightmove and it becomes a lead. Rightmove count that and just say, 52 million leads we had last year. And then you think, hang on, we saw what I wrote a few months ago about the actual conversion rate of a Rightmove lead. It's 2%. That's just conversion of lead to someone that actually is a house buyer stroke seller. Which means that 98% of what they do is completely and utterly worthless, doesn't monetize. But Rightmove, On The Market, Zoopla have all made a lead easier to create as a consumer, so when you're the drunk person 3 a.m, because they then use it to justify their ridiculous price increases to the industry a year later. The Rightmove rep walks in, I still remember this at eMoov, big smile on his face once a year, make him a cup of tea, hello James, I know what's coming. He says, well, we can either do this the formal way, where I'm going to go through the presenter and tell you how great we are because all the leads are up and this is up and that's up. And then you say, but James, I'm going to end up paying 12.5% more this year than last year anyway, aren't I? And he smiles and says, yeah, you are. And it's all based on trick metrics, vanity metrics, because leads, to me, a lead is something that comes in and has a reasonable chance of converting into something proper and tangible and get the teeth into and convert into revenue. Rightmove's definition of a lead is a metric they can show the city that uses the leads, inverted commas, to justify stronging their price up every year to their agents so that their ARPA goes up from 1,000 to 1,200 quid a month. Now, what's Rightmove's target? Let's not forget, £2,000 a month. Rightmove's chosen target for agents. The
And you see, the thing I haven't even
is
mentioned is that to an actual mover or consumer, they will tell you that you make an inquiry on Rightmove, you do not hear back. You know,
but,
unless it's a higher value property.
but why would you as an agent, when 9 times out of 10 you ring a list,
This is my point.
and the bloke at the other end of the phone or the woman says, I don't even remember clicking the button, mate.
It's astonishing how much money that company makes for the almost zero value that it adds to it. Do you know, if Rightmove vanished tomorrow, it would make zero difference to the property industry.
Yeah, no, of course, because they're regurgitating the agent's own stock. It's like me taking the shirt off your back and charging you 50 quid for you to wear it.
So problem number one, movers, the advice from the media is bad. Problem number two, lead gen leads to sellers making unwise choices.
Yeah,
okay?
I agree.
I
can't believe we're agreeing, Charlie, on this. There was a time when we didn't agree on much, but yeah.
And problem number three is most sellers, when they do have agents around, don't really know what they're asking or why. They don't really know what to look for in an agent.
And they ask the wrong questions. Yeah.
Because they all make this subconscious assumption the first time out, which is my house is worth the same no matter who sells it. That is an assumption that they're making. Because you would never pick an agent based on fee unless you've made that assumption. Yeah. You would have to believe your house was going to sell for the same price no matter who sold it. Now this is an innocent mistake. It's made out of ignorance. It's not made out of stupidity. So all of these lead to a terrible experience before you even got to conveyancing. Right?
Yeah.
So although agents know that probably overall the biggest pain point is getting an agreed sale through to completion. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's risky, it's a horrible phone calls, endless emails, etc. And then being shouted at by the consumer whenever anything goes wrong because you're the agent who you shout at. From a mover, and one of the things I find fascinating about, from my position as an impartial observer between agents and movers, is how the agent industry is so inward looking, talks to itself, talks to each other, talks about its problems, and never even talks about, let alone acknowledges, the challenges that movers are facing.
Yeah.
Never even think about it. You never hear discussion about it. So, BestAgent solves all those problems. Doesn't solve the conveyancing one at all.
Yeah.
And
the choice of agents and how.
Right. So, problem number one, picking three at random. Okay? When a seller wants to sell a house and doesn't know who to choose, they put their details into BestAgent, and the first thing BestAgent does is it finds the 20 geographically closest agents who are currently listing 2 or more properties for sale, not under offer, for sale in the same postcode. Right. Okay? That's rule number one. Give me the 20 nearest agents who currently today have 2 properties for sale in the same postcode. We don't look at how many, and all 20 are sent that lead anonymous. So we don't provide the owner's name.
Right, yeah.
We provide the street name, bedrooms, property type, freehold, leasehold, all that kind of stuff, and how soon the seller wants it on the market. And the sellers have to jump through quite a few hoops. It's not a nice, easy click, click, done. It's
right, so they're qualified by the very nature of the fact that they have to go through those hoops.
Yeah, exactly. And we only allow sellers to register using one of the 5 main social media accounts, so Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, or
Twitter, LinkedIn.
No, LinkedIn. Okay, so that 0 mistyped email addresses.
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't have a password, so their security is safer right from the outset. So the seller's security is safer, and the lead that comes through doesn't have mistyped email address. So those go to the 20 nearest agents. And these agents do not have to be signed up with us. Right? So we send that lead to the 20 geographically closest agents. After we've checked that it's not an agent testing system, we never ever send a lead that isn't a real lead. Yeah. One of the things that they can say is when they want to be in the market. At the moment, typically most of them are saying 2 to 4 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Quick. Yeah, okay.
We've got a 6 to 12 months option there. It goes less than 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, or 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
So typically most of them coming through at 2 to 4 weeks. So they're at the point where they actually want to start talking to agents.
Yeah.
So it's impartial, right? It includes every kind of agent, provided they are registered geographically within that property's location.
Yeah. Okay. So what does the agent then do with the lead?
So the agent's got 3 options. It can ignore it, right?
Which
There might
some
be-
will, yeah.
But to be fair, something like it's a 2-3 bed semi. I sell 6-bed country houses. It's not. And this is the whole point. It allows them to self-select out rather than have the phone call or wasting their time going, I'm really sorry, wait. It saves time on both sides.
Yeah.
It also stops the move of calling agents the right agent. So it allows those agents who, for whatever reason, want to self-select out. Oh, I don't deal with that estate. Oh, I don't deal with that street. Whatever the reason might be.
Yeah.
Any agent that wants to be considered to be invited round can with one click acknowledge and go, yes please, I'd like to be considered. And what that will do is it will put that agent on a response list. So these are the agents who've responded.
Right. Okay. To the consumer.
To the seller.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's all they have to do. Go, yeah, yes please, I'd like to talk to you. And what they're doing is they are agreeing to make themselves available for a video call. We've built in live video. Nothing to install, no apps to install, works on any browser, mobile, anything.
Yeah.
So once that agent's done that, the vendor can immediately, with one click, initiate a video call straight away or schedule the video call. And the last thing that the agent has the option to do, and the ones that do this get much, much better results, is record a short video message saying, hi, my name's Charlie, I sell 3-bedroom semis in that part of town, have done for years, and would love to talk to you. And what that does is it shows the seller a human being who would be coming round.
Yeah.
And it allows them to just think, oh, and typically speaking, the agents who are comfortable doing that, the seller's just going, well, with one click, book the appraisal please. And so with one click they can book the appraisal straight away.
Yeah, so that then the valuation gets booked. So how do you get paid then?
The instructed agent pays us a fee that's currently 20 quid per 100 grand of asking price. So for a 250 grand property, it's 50 quid plus that.
Just effectively for the lead, not
For the instruction.
For the instruction, so not just for the valuation.
Valuation free.
Yeah.
So agents don't need to sign up. They don't need to commit to anything. There's no subscription. There's no cost of responding. There's no cost of attending evaluation. But if you're instructed, then we charge you. So some agents go, oh, I don't want to pay unless I sell it. Well, if you're not confident you can sell it, we don't want you to take instruction because we're acting for the movers here. Right. So if this is just a number for you and you're not confident you can sell it, don't have it.
Yeah.
Reject it.
Yeah.
Because genuinely, we're trying to improve the chances of a mover getting a better agent. So now, nobody, in my opinion, can recommend to a seller which agent they should use. Because the people there are changing all the time. You never know who's going where. The personal relationship between the seller and the agent is crucial, as you know. And depending on the demographics of the seller, it's going to be a different agent that they might want to work with. So the only person who knows is the seller, who they feel most comfortable with. So if you put the self-selection process where some agents just, no, I'm not going to respond to this, it's not what I want to do. The fact that the seller gets to, from the video messages that come through, go, oh, I like him or her, let's invite them round. There's already a better chance of a better rapport happening.
Yeah.
So, although there's no guarantee of a great result, the chances, we've massively improved the odds. And we had one last year, and they'd sold a couple of times. They were quite experienced sellers. They decided to try it out. They ended up choosing an agent they would never have called because they'd used the same agent before a couple of times to buy and to sell. Their expectations were 3 to 6 months, we'll get 97, 98% of asking price. They got over asking price in under a week, and they did a lovely video testimonial saying, we would never have called that agent. And we didn't know that level of service. That agent helped us find our new home and helped us get into it and just took care of the whole process. They didn't just take care of selling our house, they helped it line up. So the whole thing.
So for balance, you have a competitor called BestAgent. They do things slightly differently. And look, I know them quite well, they've been around for a little while.
Let me tell you the differences, right?
Yeah. So no, but I think, look, obviously this is going to go out to the public. I mean, they work differently from my perception, they're quite data-led in terms of selecting agents as a recommendation for you as the seller based on time to sell, price achieved as a percentage of asking price, and so on. So for the fee, yeah. So for the seller that is interested in that, I mean, to your point, yes, historic performance, but I guess the counter argument is, well, actually, I'm quite interested in using an agent that has consistently performed over a period of time.
Average performance.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as an average client.
No.
You see,
but there is such a thing as typical performance over a lot of transactions over a lot of months.
That's a low bar to be using to pick someone to sell things down.
Look, I'm just being devil's advocate. You know, there are some.
Also, they charge 10 times what we charge.
I don't know what they charge, but there will be some sellers that say, actually, look, I prefer just this overview where I can then kind of choose based on data. And look, I'm sure there's also, there will be people that your personal approach, which is here's the individual on video that's going to come round, kind of works too. But I'm just mentioning it for that.
BestAgent, I know Colby. When they first started out, I was actually really excited. It now seems like they're spending. I mean, all the agents we talked to go, it's not like BestAgent, is it? And they're pissed off.
Why?
Yeah, because they're
saying, very
successful. They're saying we've got legal actions against us for BestAgent's commission on a property that we were already talking to the client before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that.
But so my point is, it doesn't solve the problems that we've described for the mover, because it doesn't have, number one, it doesn't have all the agents.
Yeah.
Number two, it's all about the brand and the fee, right, in a constantly changing market which people are moving around. So it's not exhaustive. The stats, an individual seller doesn't care what average this or price moving that. It's like, who can get me into my new home as quick as possible?
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't even solve any problems for the agents, because I mean, they're charging 0.25% of the sale price. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, but then the counter is, if I'm an agent that's going to charge 1.5%, and therefore I end up with 1.25% net, and it's 1.25% I wouldn't otherwise have had. The agent's perspective,
I can see that.
That's great.
So, but again, it's that to me is just another lead.
And from the seller's perspective, of course, if it doesn't sell, then the agent doesn't get paid. The agent don't get paid. So it's no sell, no fee.
Yesterday, a friend of mine tried BestAgent and got a phone call saying, and the seller was like, I'm quite interested in that agent. Oh, well, they're not really signed up with us, so you should go with this agent. Well, I know that agent, I don't want to go with that agent. No, they're really good, you should go. So there were people at BestAgent.
Was that not based on
pushing an individual agent?
That based on the data being better for the agent they were recommending?
I don't know. But the point is, they weren't being impartial.
Yeah.
They weren't being impartial. So BestAgent, I think, had great promise. And I think when BestAgent got it,
that's a lot of business. I mean, it's not, and it's been around.
Rightmove does a lot of business.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I first came across Colby at BestAgent must be 2014, 15. So I think they've been around for a while. You know, and look, I know this isn't about you and your competitors, but just as we're kind of shooting the breeze, BestAgent do have quite an advantage when it comes to their visibility by marketing. So their SEO. They did a deal with Channel 4 recently, so they've got a load of kind of.
It's a successful lead gen business.
TV for equity, which obviously must be successful because they keep running those ads. And when you Google whatever, BestAgent, cheapest agent, whatever, I mean that business are on page 1 of Google consistently. I mean that takes a while, right?
Which is great for agents that want to use it.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of the agents I know well said when it started out, it felt different and good, and they liked it. They're still with it now. But now it doesn't feel like it's just another lead gen. But from a mover's point of view, and I've got the mover's hat on, it's not solving any problem. It's capturing the lead on Google.
But will the consumer see any difference? So forget the agent for a second, because I think from what we're saying, the agent is secondary really to the process of finding a process that allows them to choose the best agent. So it's about the consumer. Whether it's BestAgent or BestAgent, does it matter to the consumer as long as the agent is a decent agent and they sell the property and it goes through and everyone gets paid?
Right, so let's go back to your point, which is that negs aren't paid enough. People doing the deal aren't paid enough. Well, one of the things that BestAgent contributes to is consumers looking for who's got the lowest fee. And we have no...
but that's not the only criteria.
No, it's not the only criteria, but it's the criteria the mover accepts.
Well, it's one of them, potentially.
Yeah.
But it's always going to be one of them. But you're
so
also going to look at time to sell, and the big one is percentage of asking price. Because I would pay an agent another 0.5% if they're going to get me 99% of asking price rather than 96% of asking price. So anyway, look, it's a diversion into what we're talking about.
They are a competitor in as much as people who are looking for an agent will find them and find them before they find us. BestAgent doesn't seek to become the only thing, right? I just seek to become a new, different way for people selling or letting their home to find an agent.
So how do
without
people
being sucked into the lead gen
How do they
funds.
find you though? So how does the consumer find you?
Oh, they don't yet.
Because I mean, B2C marketing, I know from my eMoov days, it's millions and millions of pounds in order to get found when you're searching online or on Facebook or whatever for an agent or the best moving experience or whatever. I mean, that's a very expensive process.
Well, so at the moment, a lot of our traffic is coming from my YouTube audience.
Well, this.
Yes. This, this comes down to some of these agents don't like. So agents are, in my view, quite rightly fed up with having to pay large fees to lead gen businesses for business that, on average, they would have got
And
anyway.
Google and Facebook are the worst. And you know how Google work is, you know, a quick kind of demonstration of this. When I started eMoov back in 2009, we started using Google AdWords immediately. And the term online estate agent was not something that was very searched for at that time, because people didn't know that they existed. In fact, they didn't really. We kind of, us and House Network invented the term, invented the business. So a click cost was about £2.50. By the time eMoov ended at the end of 2018, that click cost was over £50. It'd gone up 20x. So Google, and this is why they're a $1 trillion business making billions and billions of dollars, is they look and they think, okay, that person's got an advert, and based on the demand for that key phrase and the amount of people with those adverts, our algorithm would decide what the click cost is. And yeah, and all that happens is every single, well, not just year, every month, that click cost goes up and up and up. And it becomes completely unsustainable. I say this to all my clients that are startups in my PR business. It's an unsustainable marketing channel because you're attracted by the quick kind of clickbait, which is social, Google AdWords campaign. Next day I start getting leads, I start converting them. Investors are happy. Well, in 2 years' time, investors won't be, because they can say, "Hang on, you're spending $100 grand a month on Google AdWords, and you're only bringing in 10 grand's worth of business from it." It's completely unsustainable. You know.
Well, I know, and the thing is, Purplebricks had bottomless funds at that point, and they were the ones bidding up the.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. Sorry.
Oops. We're
Well,
not
as I
laughing.
predicted, but the point is, I mean,
Do you know what the cash burn is?
No.
A quick aside. I mean, I did a piece on this yesterday. Their cash burn now, they're burning through £2.66 million a month. That's what they're spending.
It's nearly £100 a day.
Yeah. They burned through 16 million quid in the last 6 months.
Well, I mean, they should never have existed. They only did because of that, admittedly, excellent but misleading TV ad campaign.
They would say differently, I'm sure.
Things that were like, right?
You went through battles with them. I've got my battles with them now. Nothing to do with Michael and Kenny. I think they were very clever. Michael and Kenny Bruce.
No, they were lucky. They were like Del and Rodney finding out and watching.
You can't say that. You can't say that 4 years of growth was luck. No way. I mean, that they raised the right money for the right people. They had the right proposition for the consumer.
The right people. The Wonga founder. How's that the right?
Way
Neil
before.
Woodford. How did that turn out?
Well, no, but yeah, Neil Woodford now has obviously, you know, his head is under a cloud. But the right people for that business in terms of deep pockets, I mean, and their marketing and their messaging was extremely clever.
Yes, that is the only reason they did well.
Yeah, and now they're not.
And because they
they're
had
not
no scruples. They didn't mind taking money off people on false pretenses.
Oh, that's a bold claim.
No, my ASA complaint was upheld on that basis.
Yeah.
So,
that's not something that I would ever agree with, because I think, look, the
ASA said so.
They were entrepreneurial, they were smart, and the consumer liked what they were offering. I'm sure they'd have a real big issue.
Consumer liked what they
being
thought
accused
they were.
of being misleading. Yeah.
I'll say it again and again, because I've got hard copy evidence from the ASA saying yes, we agree, and they will have to change the advert.
Yeah.
Because the advert was misleading.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, the guy was hauled up on Watchdog because his LPEs were signing him up to credit agreements and they didn't know. There's nothing clever or entrepreneurial about conning people.
We could do a whole separate video on Purplebricks as it is now.
As far as I can say, the history.
And as it was then. Yeah. But look, you know, it's I see it as a very successful business.
They hurt a lot of people.
Yes, and look, did they have their trials and tribulations? Yes, and actually a lot of that were complaints brought by competitors that were worried about them. I mean, in a big way. the high street guys
Misplaced
thought that they were going to have to. Well, yeah, but what would have happened if Michael and Kenny had stayed? They would not be in the position they're in now in terms of being down in the gutter. But look, anyway, Purplebricks is a separate entity.
I'm sorry, I couldn't disagree with you more on that. They got lucky. They got lucky with their investors.
But I'd be the first to say that because they were a competitor of mine that did.
No, I know.
But
you bought into the business model, which is why I think.
Well, I did it first. I did it first, right? So, but you know, if they were lucky, why wasn't I?
Because they lied to people.
No, I disagree with that.
They straight out lied to people who parted with money, thinking that they were going to sell the house, and didn't know for a minute there was a chance of handing over their 800 quid or it was. That might be left sitting with their what's in their hand a year later.
So look, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not their apologist. I'm not their defender.
No.
But I don't know of any cases where they've been successfully upheld as having misled the consumer. I don't, your ASA, but the ASA, come on. The ASA, I had at eMoov about 11 complaints upheld against us for saying things such as, this is the typical saving that you will make.
That's nitpicking.
Well, no, but that's what the ASA do. The ASA, and they've got no teeth, by the way, so actually the ASA have got no bite in terms of making you do anything. It's a bit like, you know, a cabal of, you know, old guys in a room deciding that they don't like what you've said, and that being seen as some kind of legal precedent up there with the might of an appeal court. I mean, it's, the ASA are nothing. I mean, they really are. The big bite is trading standards.
Who would go on record.
Yes, so Purplebricks were never up. They never had any issues upheld by a court or by trading standards that are the real police of the sector. So anyway, look, we'll disappear down a rabbit hole here, I'm sure.
But actually, where that overlaps with our earlier conversation is that thing that's now called Smart Val, which is
on the booming website,
which is where consumers have to, and then agents have to race, and within 15 minutes have to respond with a valuation figure.
That's great.
Well, if you see the threads of agents who are doing it, saying, I'm trying to relax in the evening, watch TV with my family.
Well, maybe they shouldn't be in the estate agency business then. Because look, we keep talking about the consumer, right? So this is all about the consumer. That's the lens through which we should be looking at the agent.
Let me finish the comment I was making, right? Because these agents are saying, I am racing to give a valuation figure on a property I haven't seen.
No, but that's not the point of Smart Val. The point of Smart Val is to start the conversation so that the agent the agent can do then exactly what you're doing with BestAgent, which is to get face-to-face in the lounge a day or two later. That's exactly what Smart Val is.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's no different to automated Val.
But the difference is the speed, and I think where it works very well is that it suits the consumer. If I want a valuation on my property, albeit an automated valuation, or I want a valuation booked, I don't want to wait 36 hours for someone to come back to me because I'm in front of my screen now.
No, of course not.
I've got time now as a consumer. And the problem with Rightmove valuations and website valuations is the agent often either doesn't come back to the consumer at all or takes 48 hours to do so. The beauty of the booming Smart Val product is you're going back to that consumer when they are still engaged as a potential consumer. That's how it works. And look, from what I understand, I've not seen the numbers, but there are a lot of agents that are doing very well out of it. They're engaging consumers in conversation straight away, getting face-to-face and converting those face-to-face valuations into listings because of that speed.
Well, I've been objectively quietly watching the private Facebook group where they're all talking about it, and there's a few going, I've had a few instructions, but mostly they're tyre kickers.
But this comes back to the fundamental problem with estate agency, is estate agents, a bit like conveyancers, as we were talking about just now, they want everything to be like it was in 1975. Look, the agents, if they want to be successful, they need to innovate, they need to improve, and they certainly need to be in line with consumer expectations in 2022, not consumer expectations in 1982. So, you know, I'm not surprised as agents moaning about Smart Val. They're the ones that shut up shop at 5 o'clock, don't reply to their Rightmove, Boomin and Zoopla leads, and probably don't return customers' calls.
I think that's a harsh generalisation.
Well, I've been in the industry 25 years, I'll tell you that.
What I'm saying is, I've seen actual agents saying, I'm replying to these leads out of hours.
Yeah,
and it's not working.
Because the consumer doesn't work within hours.
No,
the consumer works
they're not complaining, they're saying, I'm buying into it, I'm doing what I'm asked, I'm responding with a number within 15 minutes you probably haven't seen.
The problem for those agencies that there are, as I understand it, tens of thousands of those leads now being created by Boomin and Smart Val leads. Tens of thousands. Because of course, what Boomin under Michael and Kenny are doing is exactly what they did with Purplebricks, building a household name really quickly. So their marketing budget of whatever it is, 15, 20 million quid a year, is already now generating huge consumer demand in terms of those inquiries. If the agent wants to sit back and ignore those leads, and they're genuine leads from people, far better than a Rightmove lead, because they're actually, yeah, please come and value my house. I want to have a conversation about that now. If the agent says, oh, it's gone 5 o'clock, it's gone 5 o'clock, well, no, I couldn't possibly reply to that until Monday.
The seller's going, I want an online valuation.
And
it's a real agent rather than an automated agent.
Or for the agent, if they're not going to get with that advancement based on what the consumer wants. So it's no different to what you're doing.
It's very different. So one of the things is that, I mean, you couldn't make up the irony of this. They've started up agents together because they're really worried about agents' mental health. And there are agents saying that this is destroying my quiet time, my family in the evening, and it's making me anxious.
Agents together and booming are completely separate things. I mean, they might have, there's commonality in terms of people, but agents together isn't part of booming. It's a totally separate entity.
I was telephoned by someone before Agents Together was announced to ask me if I would be a mentor. That person said to me, this is to try and repair their damaged perception from agents before they launch their new thing, which hadn't been announced at that point. I said, if any agent thinks that I'm of any use as a mentor to them, they're welcome to call me, and you're welcome to put my name on the list of mentors, but I don't want my name publicly associated with it. All right, sorry, thanks. It's PR. Of course it is. It looks like they care.
But if you were to be interviewing Sarah Edmondson now, who's the
I
CEO
love her.
of
She's
Agents
great.
Together, she'd be telling you story after story after story of all the agents that they've helped.
Oh, sorry. I'm not saying that they aren't helping agents. I'm not saying that. But yet again, Michael and Kenny are getting other people working for free and making them look good.
Yeah,
right?
but they would say, if they were sitting here, they're not here to
volunteers.
defend themselves. Well, no, hang on. We've set up a charitable organisation that's run by people to help agents, and they're giving their time to help other people.
They're making themselves look good on the back of mental health.
Yeah, but like you would if you did any
without even
charity
paying
work.
any of the mentors.
Yeah, but
Right?
it wouldn't. But do
it's-
people working for charities in that capacity really, honestly, want to get paid
Being a
to do
mentor
the
to
right
someone
thing?
isn't charitable. If you're just supporting people who
But they're
come
doing
to
it
help.
throughout. They're doing it through their own free choice. You know, the likes of Michael Day, and
Yeah,
whoever else,
amazing people.
Chris Watkins,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
on. Yeah, they're not idiots. These people.
No.
So they're
They
doing
don't,
it
but
out
they've been
of kindness of their
seduced by the
heart.
sparkly Bruce
No,
brothers.
but that kind of insults their intelligence, doesn't it? You're saying that Michael Day and Chris Watkins are
shouldn't we all have that question
rabbits in the
sometimes?
headlines, that they've been cast a spell over by Michael and Kenny Bruce.
I think it's very, very healthy for everyone to ask themselves that question.
Yeah.
Have I perhaps been seduced by the sparkly stuff? Could I perhaps have helped people without their involvement?
But couldn't it just be as simple as those mentors want to do the right thing for the
They
industry?
don't need Kenny and Bruce to do that.
Well, don't
They can go out on social media and say, hi, I'm here for an awesome help.
Agents Together, and look, Sarah runs it, right? Under Sarah, they've provided the platform for that advice, mentoring, help, and for some mental health counselling, which...
But people who needed it could have got it without that. Sarah's someone
Well,
I
sure,
respect
but there wasn't a
massively. She's
platform.
paying, that's different.
Yeah, but there isn't a platform, is there? I don't know of any other platform.
You don't need a platform to get mentoring. That's like...
Ring the Samaritans as a lister that's had a shit day.
No, you can just... I mean, the rest of the world, if they actually want help, just ask people for it.
Yeah, I don't
Don't go to an organisation
Ask
to a
who?
brand.
Ask who?
Anyone. They are social media.
If I
They
rang
can
you
do
and said,
it.
I've had a shit day, Charlie.
I saw an agent yesterday on Twitter
But that's not
say
reality, is
literally, an agent yesterday on Twitter said, I'm having a properly shit day. And he got loads of responses and he was like...
The chances of even 1% of the estate agency fraternity turning to social media publicly and saying, I'm having a problem mentally, you never see it. We rarely see it because people are not going to do that. The beauty of Agents Together is you can go and do that, and it's kind of under the cover. It's done.
You or I could put on our LinkedIn profile, anyone who's having a tough time, if you think I can help, private message me.
Yeah, but far better for a platform to be produced that actually facilitates that. That's what they do.
How? I mean, I don't see how. What it
Because they
facilitates.
provide
You can find.
It's weird as well. They've got dozens and hundreds of
It's
mentors.
very clever. Like they rinsed their LPs for years to the point that there's now a massive class action against them. They are people. I don't know them personally. They might be very nice people. They might just be misguided, right? I have people I know who I really respect and like, and they're good people who have made investments into companies that they didn't realise were bad, right? And they don't realise that they're hurting people. I don't know Kenny. I don't know Michael. Or it's like either they know they're hurting people and doing
Yeah,
it.
but when you say hurting people, what do you mean by hurting?
Taking money off sellers without selling their house.
Yeah, but they would also argue that.
Other false pretenses.
So last time
LPEs making them work
But look,
at their own
look,
expense.
be clear, Michael and Kenny haven't been part of that business for some time now. The last time I heard Michael talking about, let's say, the performance of the business was I think he did Radio 4, and he talked about, and you can argue this is wrong, but this is what he said, so we assume it's right. 88% of Purplebricks listings sold, right?
No one assumes that, right?
But that's what he said, so just assume that that's correct for a second, which means, given that they were listing 6,000 properties a month, right, so about 70,000 properties a year, 88% of 70,000 listings were sold and saved people an inordinate amount of money.
You don't believe that, though, for a minute, do you?
I'm just playing out the facts and the data that we have in front of us, right? So
it's not a fact.
No, but when you talk
Speculation,
about hurting people, there's an argument that 60,000 people a year have saved anything between £2,000 and £20,000.
No, but we know from Colby's data that online agents get less for your property than conventional.
That's not the data that I saw. So 20 CI.
4% less.
20 CI. When I had 20 CI do a complete analysis of the sector back in 2017, the opposite was true.
No, but later than that, 20 CI were the ones who did it.
So online agents were selling quicker and were selling for a greater amount of money compared to asking price. Do you know why? Because the sellers were motivated more because they'd already committed a payment. That's why.
I don't know which parallel universe you live in, Russell.
No, that's the data.
No.
I know you don't want facts
My
to get in the way of the
calculation on Radio
story.
4 saying 88% is not data. Any more than Boris Johnson saying...
But when you're the CEO of a listed business, there has to be an assumption that is accurate.
Yes, but it's very easy to say we've sold 80%,
Otherwise, if you're
because it
saying-
depends on the definition of sold. Did they all exchange?
Well, I don't know, but if you're saying it's 50%, let's
I
say,
don't know
where do you
what
get the 50% from?
I'm not saying
It
it's
might be
100%.
100%.
I'm not putting a figure on it, 'cause I don't know.
So I threw that back at you, again, just being devil's advocate, that when we talk about hurting people, we could probably calculate that if the average person saved £3,000 in estate agency fees times 60,000 people a year, times the 5-6 years that they've been in
Didn't say
existence.
3,000 quid. The average instruction value of what they're selling is the lower end, right? We know they do
That's
well in the
250
north,
grand.
right?
Yeah, but you don't know that the outcome would have been better or worse, so we have to assume that it's on par. The data
you don't have to assume that.
No, you do, because the data that I have from when I ran an online estate agency business was that there was no detriment, absolutely no detriment, to an online agent selling a home in terms of the price achieved, right? That's what the data says. It's not my supposition, it's what the data says.
Russell, that data can't exist because no one will
I've got
know
it.
no one will know what that house would have sold for.
No, but it's an average, right? So if you take the average of, let's say, Connells sell at 97% of asking price, and Purplebricks sell at 98% of asking price, that's the average, right? There is no other way of knowing.
But asking price is different
Because
per
we
agent.
can't split the universe in two and run an A/B test,
No,
right?
it's a sliding door.
Yes, so therefore, if Purplebricks, let's say, sell 1% better, well, that's 2,700 quid better. Plus the saving on fee.
I'm not saying that there aren't some people who did that, right? If you've got one of those properties that's going to sell no matter who...
I just think it's a bit harsh to say that the Purplebricks business damaged people.
It did. It hurt sellers, which is why they were hauled up on watchdog.
No, I just counted that.
It hurt LPEs, stories of LPEs who
600
were working...
LPEs earning 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds a year.
Yeah, but sorry, the hours that they were doing, the
That's
cost,
up
they
to
weren't
you.
earning. Sorry, that's not what they're earning. That was their turnover.
This wasn't slavery.
They had to pay for their own car, their own petrol, their own... They did.
But it wasn't slavery.
They weren't earning 30 grand.
Well, the average was certainly earning that sort of money. If you
So
look,
no, that was their turnover, not what they were earning.
well, no,
They had to take all their
that's
costs out of
their
that.
revenue, that's their income.
It's not profit.
Yeah, but look, it's their choice. It's their
Yes, it
choice.
was. And a lot of them have turned around and gone,
And
I
if
was
they-
exploited.
And if they want to, no, but come on, look, this isn't, this isn't China or North Korea. They're not made to be an LPE. They decide to apply for a role, they get the role, they work in it for 3 or 4 years and earn X pounds. That's a matter for them.
They were
But
promised
what we're
stuff.
saying is all work is exploitative. What are you going to say next? All property is
No,
theft.
I mean, okay, so
They're not a Marxist.
the court has decided that those LPEs will have a claim, and there's now...
But the court
there's
hasn't decided that. The claim hasn't gone in yet.
There is a class action.
Yeah,
Right,
I know it well because I'm the PR agency for the lawyer.
right, okay.
But it hasn't gone in yet.
So what stage is it at?
It's at the point where enough agents have triggered the principle of the action, and now the claimant, which will be, it's not called a class action, it's called whatever the UK term is. It now triggers the request of the court to turn it into a group litigation order, GLO.
Yeah.
That group litigation order is at that point, once that's accepted by the court, then the claim gets drawn, that then gets submitted, disclosure happens, and then there'll be a claim probably sometime down the line.
So the lawyers that you're doing PR for believe that there are enough injured legally people.
No, so this is nothing to do with Purplebricks as a business exploiting, as you put it. This is the mechanism that now exists around IR35 and similar, it's not all about IR35, where the law now says, so it didn't say back then, now says that the company will be liable for things like holiday pay and pension contributions themselves rather than the individual, and that's what's triggered the action. So it's got nothing to do with what Purplebricks thought or did
because they were working longer hours than an employee would have been allowed to do by law.
Because they were self-employed. Yes,
I know, but the law as it was then allowed those LPs to be exploited, and that's what the case is.
It's not exploitative, is it? They had their own businesses, so they wanted to work hard to do as well as they could. Look, I know LPEs and I know territory owners that are no longer LPs and territory owners that earn 80, 90, 100 pounds a year.
I'm sure there were some that did good ones.
Well, that's...
Sorry, a territory owner, they're part of the exploitation.
Yeah.
They've got the LPs working for them.
But we're saying that 600 LPEs of their own choice and volition decided to go and do a job and continue doing that job, and that's exploiting them. Why don't they just go and do something else if they thought it was exploitative?
I don't know. I have to ask them. I can't say.
It was fine at the time to take.
This isn't my opinion. This is what I've read some of them say.
Right?
I feel like I was sold.
Yeah, but that's anecdotal. You could always find 3 or 4 people out of 600 or 5 out of 5,000.
If there's a group litigation or whatever the hell.
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with the conditions of work. That has got everything to do with what the law now says. No, there's a massive differentiation where it now says that actually they were not formally self-employed, they were employed. Got nothing to do with hours of work. That's got everything to do with the fact that now Purplebricks actually owes them potentially holiday pay and pension contributions. By the way, it's stage 1.
Those are conditions of work.
No, they're not. No, that's not what the action's about. It's not about the hours or the effort they put in. It's what should have been paid rather than avoided as a self-employed dynamic. And those hundreds, as there are, of LPEs that have now become part of that group litigation order, they stand to win, on average, probably £15,000 to £20,000, depending on how long they were at Purplebricks, based on the fact that neither they nor Purplebricks, or Purplebricks didn't pay those contributions. Those contributions are now due.
I call that exploitation.
No, but
you disagree with me.
Don't twist it, because we started off talking about hours worked. So that was your exploitative measure.
Okay, but holiday pay comes into that.
No, but that's a whole different subject and argument altogether.
You just said hundreds of LPEs are going together to
but they weren't made.
They didn't get what they should have.
But they weren't made to work there, and they weren't made to work the hours. What we're talking about here is a change of law that now allows, potentially, if it's accepted and if it's proven, that claim to benefit those LPEs. It's almost retrospective. So it didn't apply back then, but it applies now. Anyway, we're going to disappear down another road.
Yeah. I just think that sometimes nice people hear a great story and go, yeah, that sounds great, I'll do that. And the reality is more, they thought there was something up to. And in my mind, that's exploitation, when you knowingly take the contribution of someone like that who's being naive about what the reality is going to be.
But people have to take personal responsibility for their own actions.
I'm sure they have.
So otherwise we end up in this hideous left woke, it's not get too political, but this nurse-maiding type
capitalist
nurse-maiding type dynamic where we've got to look out for everything.
It matters how you make your money.
So do I have to second guess everyone I employ? Do I have to go through some kind of fluffy psychometric test to make sure they completely understand the contract? To make sure they completely understand that, sometimes I might ring you at 5:30, or you might have to do a bit of extra Saturday work sometime.
No one is that.
But it's not practical nor necessary to nursemaid employees to the point that you have to second guess whether they think they are being exploited retrospectively 3, 4, 5 years later. It's up to them. They take responsibility for their own actions, their own role in their careers, surely. Anyway, we'll agree to disagree.
Okay. Yeah.
I knew we'd get to disagree again.
I definitely disagree with you on that, because I just think that just because someone is naive enough to believe one thing, when you as an employer know that the reality
are coal miners exploited? HGV drivers have to sleep in their cabs, are they exploited?
Not if they told that at the beginning, no.
Well, they wouldn't have been told all of the effects 20 years down the line of breathing in coal dust.
Coal miners and lorry drivers don't have OTE targets. And that's where it comes.
Nor did the self-employed, did they?
On target earnings. Like, this is what you could earn. It's up to you. You've got to sign people up for Purplebricks contract.
But that's not the target. Clearly, the more properties they list, the more they get paid. That's the nature of being in a sales business, isn't it?
And a lot of them were getting people to sign something that Michael Bruce had to go on TV and apologise.
Do you know, when I sold cars in the 80s for Lancasters, and I worked 12, 14 hours a day, so back then in the 90s, earned 60 grand a year, maybe I should stick a claim in. I was exploited.
Well, no, you did very well out of that.
No, but I worked ridiculous hours.
So no one's
and it probably
objecting to
weighed
the
on my
hours
mental
if
health.
you're getting paid for them. But
If they are getting paid, the more they did, the more they got
they
paid.
worked out they're not even getting minimum wage for the hours that they do.
Well, look, that's very anecdotal and subjective.
Yeah, maybe. But listen, I'm impartial. I had no. It didn't matter. The reason Purplebricks threatened me was because I saw what they were doing and go, hang on a second. They are exploiting naive people, both customers and staff. So that's why I put my oar in and said.
But you're saying that 650 LPEs were all naive. That's
no, not
again
all of
another
them. Not all of them.
Sweeping
Some
statement.
of them.
A bit insulting.
Some of them have admitted it themselves. We were naive. We believed what we were told. I've been naive many times in the past. I'm sure there must have been things in the past when you thought you were naive.
But I don't expect anybody to protect me from my own naivety.
But
That's up
everyone's
to
not
me.
you. You're not everyone.
It's up to me.
You're a more resilient,
It's
tougher
up-
character than most people.
No, I'm a shrinking violet. You know that. But it's up to me to learn from my naive situation so that I'm no longer naive, right?
But that doesn't make it okay. Oh, well, I haven't learned yet. It's up to them to learn. I'll exploit them until I have
It's not a business's fault that someone's naive.
It's a business's fault. You have a responsibility.
No, well, to make sure someone's not naive. No,
You have
no
a responsibility
business has
to
that
make sure that you're
responsibility.
not exploiting someone's naivety. Yes.
No, but there's a difference between
Maybe that's
naivety
where you and I
and
disagree.
exploitation. No, but
Right.
that's the line, right? Exploitation, as in slavery, for instance, is absolutely and totally unacceptable. Someone being naive is a totally different, separate,
Okay, to
or
explain
benign
that.
thing. No, it's not. But
Sounds like what you're saying.
But we disagree with the definition of someone being naive about something, if they were, because they may actually have got exactly what they thought they were going to get based on exactly what was promised. We don't know, we're being subjective. But big difference. It's not our job, yours or mine, or employers, to make sure you're not being a bit naive here, are you, employee number 7? They just want to make sure that you don't think I'm taking advantage of you. I mean, that's just not the real world. That's not capitalism. That's the opposite of capitalism, actually. That's socialism. You should be a union leader.
No. I think there's a balance.
Charlie Scargill.
I don't think that capitalism means disregarding employees' naivety.
No, but it's not.
And it's their
It's
fault.
not. Yeah, but I think you're conjuring up an extreme that might not
I promise
be
you.
reality.
I mean, I didn't have this problem with Yoko. I didn't have this problem with eMoov, right? It was just
But eMoov
Purplebricks.
employed all of their local
Right,
property
so
agents
this
from
is
day
my
one.
point. Like,
Well,
I
because we
don't even
chose
have a position here. This is just me as a totally impartial outside observer going, they're hurting people. They're lying
I think that's a strong,
and hurting people.
a
I
strong
will
statement.
stand by that. And you know what? When they threatened me, and I got this law saying, you must not this, that, and the other, I said, no, I stand by all of these things, I can back them up, and I'm happy for a judge to decide. I never heard from them again. So they didn't clearly feel strong enough, either they didn't care.
Well, no, probably because they didn't think it was worth the time, effort, and money to.
Well, did they ever sue anybody?
I don't know.
They threatened everyone and sued no one, in classic bully style.
Or maybe they would just say that they were just protecting.
If
their
they
money.
hadn't had such a great TV campaign, they would never have done as well as they did.
Well, that comes back to full circle to what we said a few minutes ago. Very clever marketing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, very good marketing. Now, the last part of... So the reason I've got my computer open here is that... So BestAgent, in order to do what I told you that it does, we are analysing and assessing the entire country's stock on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So we've got all the listings.
Well, their property stock. Yeah.
So we actually have it on the BestAgent site. We've also got all the properties and sales and lettings, 100%. And it's automatically grabbed because it doesn't make sense to do it any other way because they're always expensive and the agents have to pay for it. And we've discovered something really interesting, which is that pretty much, I mean, sometimes it's actually smack on, but anywhere in the country, 10% of agents have 50% of the market.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
It's really interesting. And it's, in many places, it's actually as much as 60-65% of the market, just 10% of agents.
Yeah.
And this is of agents currently listing livestock for sale, excluding all the under offer and sold stuff, right? 10% of available listed stock, 50% or more of available listed stock is being listed by just 10% of agents.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So you've got this two-tier industry where 10% of those agents, on average, are listing 10 times the properties of the other 90%.
Yeah.
So you can now quickly see why some agents think running is great value and some think it's really expensive. Okay? Because if you're listing 10 times the stock level of the other 90%, well, you are getting better value.
Well, because you're not paying Rightmove more for your stock, unless you're an online agent, in which they in the hybrids, which they are. Yeah.
Now, as a mover, wearing my hat representing movers, these agents can't be 10 times better than the other 90%. They can't be delivering 10 times better results.
But maybe the agents without the stock are 10 times worse. It could be.
Some of them,
yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some shockingly terrible
really
agents out there.
Yes, yeah.
They really, really are.
Yeah.
So there's this doesn't, in my view, assist the consumer in making a better choice. What it shows is that 50% of leads are being vacuumed up by the effective, clever marketing of 10% of agents.
Yeah.
Now, what our data also shows, but I cannot back this up with the actual numbers yet, because it's a huge amount of data, is that the failure rate of first-time instruction, in other words, instruction to sold, is much higher amongst that 10% of agents.
Even in the market we've just had, which is skewed.
No, it's not. Sorry. Yes, actually, even in the market we just had, it's still worse there. For the very simple reason this: when you are a numbers agent and you encounter a tricky sale, it's not worth it. That goes with the agent. Right. So those agents, now there are exceptions. It's not all of them in that top 10% at all. Some of the agents in that top 10% have clearly earned that position by reputation. They are a small local agent, they've got one, maybe two offices, and they're just ruling. They've been there for a long time. The owner's had his name above the door for 25 years. He's trusted. He's been recommended so many times, and that's a nice thing to see. When I pick a postcode, and I'd like to ask you to give me a postcode. Just pick one and see what the numbers say. But of that 10%, about 1 in 5 of them are those ones that are there for the right reasons. The rest don't have any evidence that I can see of the performance that
warrants that volume, right? Yeah.
And the problem,
so it's all about their brand and marketing.
And the problem for me is that the reason that no company and no technology can ever recommend a branch or a brand to anybody is because it's down to the individual. Let me tell you a quick story. I used to sell photographs of floor plans to loads of agents in London. And we had offices in Richmond, and we did Knight Frank, Savills, Jackson Stopps, Douglas and Gordon, Hamptons. We were busy. We were doing over 100 instructions a day, photographing the floor plan.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this chap. His name is Phil Richardson, I think it was, and he was the manager of the Hamptons office in Richmond. And he was a really good client of mine, and I used to take him for lunch 2-3 times a year. And also in Richmond, I had Knight Frank as clients and Savills as clients. And Jackson Stopps and John D. Wood, actually, I had like 5 or 6 agents in Richmond. And all of the other clients said the same to me, like, we just can't touch him. He's cleaned up. Hampton's had as much stock as all those other agents put together, at the top end of the market. And you met this guy, and you realise why. He was this softly spoken, quiet but confident, didn't have to sell you anything. And every time I was with him for lunch, just in lunch, his phone would ring 3-4 times with someone saying, "Hi, my friend Joan has told me you're the only guy to sell my house." They didn't ask about fees, and his instructions just came in to his mobile phone to him.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to his competitors about it, they were just in awe of him. They're like, we just can't touch him. Nothing we've got to touch with this guy. It had nothing to do with the Hamptons brand, although I think that is actually, I know, we did all Hamptons offices in London, and a lot of them were really outstanding. It was a good culture there that led to something special and extra that other brands didn't have. But the point is, that great individual could work in a corporate, in an online agent, in a one-man band, in a local, in a self-employed franchise model. You just don't know. It's different everywhere, and that is the problem that faces the consumer. And it's why all lead gen and brand marketing doesn't help the consumer to make the right choice. Only an exhaustive selection of all the local individuals is the only way, in theory, that you can make sure you don't miss out on that human that's going to get you really well. So, we've now got this really fascinating data, which we're completely impartial and objective. It's just all public data, which is what we're looking at to see, or we can start to see in a postcode or in a town, which brands are doing the biggest price drops on average. Which brands are doing the most frequent? what percentage of their stock are they dropping in price within X weeks?
Yeah.
How many are they losing to other agents? What's their instruction to sold ratio or failure ratio? And everyone thinks that, oh good, you're going to publish that. No, it doesn't help the public, that data. Because even an agent that perhaps has the worst instruction to sold ratio in a town, he gets some good deals. And depending on the client and the property, he might be just the right agent for that. You know, I actually had a client, we had one in London, Kinley's guy. And he was actually hardcore pro sales guy, right? But he came out and just said, I will get you a record price for this property because I've had 2 buyers who've fallen through, they're looking for houses just like yours in the last week. They're both funded up, they're going to outbid each other. We will have your property. And it didn't even get the market. A few phone calls, it was sold. So sometimes that's the right guy, but he may also be piling
but what you're saying is rather than a generic data look at performance, you're saying that it's better to match up an agent with a seller because of the bespoke nature of that. But then I'd argue it's both.
Well, it is. So what I've identified.
Because I don't want a nice guy that actually, when I look back and look at their performance, I find that they actually were the worst agent. Because
no, you're right.
Because actually, if they're the worst agent of 10 in terms of time to sell, price achieved, fall through rate, and so on, then that average is there for a reason. And I have statistically, mathematically, and I go back to the get agent point. This is why they produce this data. I have more chance of failure statistically. But it might be that I meet the guy or the girl, whoever it might be, that's the lister, and really like them. But I think it has to be,
no, I agree
to be both.
It's that is as much of a trap to fall into as being signed up by the hard closer. Yeah. And so you need a balance. And the advice we say is look for someone that you both feel is trustworthy and comfortable, but also demonstrates real experience and professionalism, competence. It's trustworthiness and competence, and you need both. And in my view, the best agents are the ones that are actually highly trustworthy and highly competent. And they're the ones that don't need to compete on fee because they're always busy because people know that they're actually the best. They don't exist everywhere. So what we're planning to do with this data is to make it available to agents for free in their Best Agent back office account where they can look at the postcode and just see the data. Now, what we want to do is to equip a small local independent with imagine the scenario, right? Seller's got down to 2 agents. One is someone he really likes, the other one is someone who's a hard closer, got all the chat and all the prop tech gimmicks. Yeah? They're still not quite sure. If the guy that they like can show the data that the fall through rate of this guy is actually really high, he can use that. In that private scenario, he can go look at the data I've got here. This is the data out of Best Agent's back office. My success ratio is higher than that guy's. And I want the agents to be able to produce that, let's say help them to win a
But isn't that just flipping the get agent proposition? Because the get agent proposition does the data first, and then of course, once you bring 3 agents in or 5 agents in for evaluation, then it becomes about the individual. So you're kind of doing the same thing as the other way around.
Possibly, but the point is we're
I'm not saying one
leaving
way
it up
is
to the
right or
agent.
wrong.
I don't think data should come into it that much. I think if the data is the decider between 2 people you can't pick, then yes, it does matter. But only at that.
I remember having an argument with a CTO of mine at eMoov ages ago about empathy in data and the fact that data should be the driving force behind everything. I personally think that data is the argument winner, really. So data is the thing that shows the transparency of something. So, whether it's averages, a typical this, a generic that, it does show a general kind of performance, like a 0 to 60 time, if you like. But you only get to the data through the empathy in the first place, or you use the data to get to a semblance of a shortlist, and then the empathy kicks in. It's the archetypal, good old-fashioned head and heart. I do think it's both, and I'm not sure it matters which way around it is, because my heart says I really liked Agent B, and the data supports that they're good, brilliant, I'll engage them. Or the data says they're crap, oh shit, I'm really surprised about that, oh well, the other guy I liked was Agent D, for instance. So I think I'm not sure it matters which way around it is, but I do think they're both important. It's, when you do big polls and surveys, you do qual and quant. So you do the qualitative thing, which is 6 people in a room, and they tell you something, and then you say, okay, well, let's test that on 500 people. That's the quantitative stuff. A proper market research exercise will be based on both, qual and quant. So I think it is both.
I think you agree with this. My feeling is that the reason there's been no runaway success of any new kind of estate agency in the last 30 years is because it's impossible to scale personal service. You can leverage it, you can make it more efficient, but because of the true personal nature where a vendor, especially first-time vendors where they're nervous, they need to be looked after, taken care of, being rung up and reassured and that kind of stuff. And actually if they're not, they'll often back out because they're just too scared and nervous of the unknown. They don't even know why. I've seen this myself, like someone wanted to sell and I just, maybe I won't, I just won't. And then the agent's like, it's okay, don't worry. You don't have to commit to anything until the day of exchange. You're gonna it's all gonna be okay. And you just need that, literally someone to hold your hand through for a lot of people. And there's the uncertainty about the mortgage and the survey and the conveyancing, all that kind of stuff. And my impartial observation of this industry, it doesn't matter whether they work for Hamptons or Countrywide or one-man band, it doesn't matter, right? The best agents are the ones that actually make the client feel like they're being personally taken care of.
Yeah.
And you can no more automate and scale that than you can automate and scale a personal massage, right? It's personal service with a huge ripple effect on the rest of that person's life. Either they get into their new dream home because you've got a great result in a short space of time, or they miss it and they end up living somewhere else, and that ripples into the rest of their life, right? So my view is that it is very difficult to scale. I've seen great agents of one office and they've been cleaning up. They open up a second office and it just died. It doesn't work. So my question to you on this topic, because I know you founded Quirk Deacon?
Quirk Deacon was our traditional estate agency business that I started with my cousin in 1999, which I came out of. I sold.
And you started from scratch?
Yeah, well, and actually we bought a traditional high street business, one office in Billericay in Essex, that had been around since the 60s. We bought that, slightly rebranded it, and then we opened office number 2, which is an office we bought from somebody. This is called Amos Estates. We rebranded that to the same as the Billericay brand. Then we opened fresh in Basildon, then Stamford, then Grays. So the first 2 offices were acquisitions.
Was it the 80s or 90s?
99 onwards. So, and we opened an office every year roughly. But the last 3 offices were new openings. So
and that was a conventional estate agency, full service.
Traditional sales, lettings, manager, lister, neg, sales coordinator, very, very, very traditional.
So you are through and through a property person, right?
Yeah, and then I did eMoov, which obviously was a different one.
This is my question. So my question is, having come from Quirk Deacon and having started something pretty much from scratch and grown it and understood this, what made you think that the eMoov model could work?
Because the perception from the consumer was that estate agency fees were too expensive. That's what people...
They're wrong, we know that.
Well, they're wrong in comparison to other markets. But in terms of the amount of money that is charged, if you look at it in cold light of day, £4,000 to sell a £300,000 property in a good market when it's made to look easy, the perception is, I'm talking about perception, not reality, the perception by the consumer is that it's expensive. And we at eMoov, we did a whole bunch of consumer research on this, where generally that was the perception. And you've only got to look at what's talked about in the media, not just by journalists, but vox pops and people that talk about their experience at the hands of estate agents. They generally think it's expensive, but importantly, this is the important thing, it's expensive compared to the service that they received. So it may well be that actually if the service was knocked out of the park, they wouldn't mind paying that. But the differential between service and fee in the UK was a problem. And we tested this, that was definitely what people were saying. So I thought, well, if I make it cheaper and I commoditise it by consolidating, not having loads of offices, using a bit of technology, and keeping our overhead per customer much, much lower. So our overhead per customer was 10% of that of Countrywide. So where Countrywide was spending, whatever, £2,000 per customer, we were spending £200 per customer on infrastructure, admin and so on. So the numbers kind of worked. So I thought eMoov would work on the basis that it would provide better value. And not forgetting at the times, when I started eMoov in 2009, it was one of the first kind of 2 or 3 online agents, there was this huge swelling of consumer want, if you like, for transparency, choice and value. And I'll sum it up in one word, Amazon. So Amazon started to educate the consumer, I mean before 2009, but by 2009 it was a big thing that people wanted the same but delivered properly, good service and so on, for less. That was the way the consumer started. I think that's changed now. So I thought logically, and actually so did nearly 1,000 investors in the eMoov business that were also convinced of that proposition, that look, make it good, and look, I'll also caveat here, there were and are online estate agents that deliver shopping service. There were businesses, really only two I can think of, like eMoov and House Network, that genuinely delivered great service and charged less. And when you go to an investor and you say, right, so I'm going to make that better and I'm going to charge you half the price, they just say, yeah, we're in. I guess it makes logical sense. So that's why I thought it would work. And to be honest, it did work at first. I mean, you know, I started in 2009. We doubled in size every year organically before I took any investment. Believe it or not, eMoov was profitable. It's the first profitable online estate agency in the country. So in 2010, 2011, we made money. I mean, not lots, 30 grand, 40 grand, until we started the growth project, if you like, which was about raising money and getting bigger. Where online agent goes wrong, or online agency goes wrong, and where it doesn't work in hindsight, and that's proven again by the data. The inconvenience of data, but it's, you know, it's the barometer. Online agency got to a maximum of 8.5% market share. So in other words, of all the properties listed, stroke sold in the UK, only 8.5% were online through Purplebricks, eMoov, Hatched, whatever, Stripe, How Simple, whatever they're called now. And that was the kind of limit, despite the fact that the sector spent, I mean, it spent about £200 million on marketing over the last 10, 12 years. Me, House Network, How Simple, particularly Purplebricks, Yopa, and so on. It's now 6%, so it's retreated significantly. So don't think about that as 2%. Think about the percentage difference between 8 and 6, right? That's a 25% reduction in market share, whatever it is, I think. That's significant. So it's not worked. And the reason it hasn't worked is not necessarily because it was seen as an arm's length thing, because for some businesses in the online sector it wasn't arm's length, it was all about service. It's because it was too cheap. So any fan of consumer psychology and buyer behaviour will understand this, and that is that if you create something as a product or service and price it too cheaply, and it could be, you know, a £2.99 all you can eat breakfast, or it could be a mobile phone, right? So iPhones have got a 40% market share worldwide. Are they the cheapest phone? No, actually they've got to 40% market share, and it's really expensive. An iPhone 13 now is what, 1,200 quid? It's ludicrous. Their margin is like that.
That one was 1,500 quid.
There you go. They probably cost them 80 quid to make that. So they could make it 300 quid, but if it was 300 quid, it wouldn't be as popular. Seriously, because the psychology is, particularly with estate agency and buying and selling property, people think, okay, valuable asset, I've lived here for 10 years, brought my kids up in this place, and I've got to make sure that I'm looked after and I get the best price. There's this counter intuition that actually if it's too cheap, it's probably not credible. And that is what I and all of the other online guys completely underestimated.
Okay.
That's why it's failed. And look, online agency, there will always be a couple of online agents around. At the moment now, from 50 4 years ago, as there were, I mean 3 when I first started, then 50 4 or 5 years later. Now really it's Purplebricks, Yopa, you don't really hear much of, Strike, who are completely demeaning themselves by being free. I mean, that is paint yourself into a corner. Basically, you've got a flag up saying, we're a bit crap, so we can only justify charging you 0. Well, that's what Strike are doing. But you've got those three. And between them, in the last 12 months, so Purplebricks lost, as we just said, about £20 million in the last 6 months, with some exceptionals. Strike lose money. Yopa lose money. So those 3 businesses together, I mean, have roughly lost about £30 million in the last 12 months alone.
All for the same reason as eMoov?
Oh yeah, because it simply doesn't work. There's no traction. And then the other problem we had, of course, is eMoov were the first to raise money. So we raised money from James Carr, the dragon. Yep. Then we went out and took venture capital money, and then we ended up with private equity money. So I raised £27 million in between 2012 and 2017. So it was a real challenging exercise. In that period of time, we raised 27 million quid. But and all that money then was spent on technology and marketing and so on. The problem was, as you go out and talk about those raising fund successes, everybody else in your sector jumps on the bandwagon. So, I'm sitting there all very smug, having taken a cheque from James Carr for £500,000 for a percentage of the business, and lo and behold, then Hatched raised money, did a deal with Connells, I think, didn't they? House Network raised money, then Purplebricks come along and raised from Millwood for 10 million, 17 million. It was, the dogs were out the traps, literally. And then all of a sudden, you imagine trying to raise money 2 years later, and you go to, literally, I'd be sitting in a room like this, and I'd say to these VCs or private equity guys, so we've got to raise £5 million, valuation is 30 million, and we're going to do this, that and the other. And they'd say, okay, but how are you different to the other 19 that we've already seen? And it's really, really hard. And of course, everyone's scrambling to raise money, everyone's trying to do the same thing, everyone's on TV. It was a very undifferentiated, very samey sector that got really big, but very noisy and busy very quickly. And it's a bit like Omicron. It hit everybody, wow, what the hell is this? And literally, in 2 or 3 years, it just went. So eMoov went out of business, House Network went out of business, Hatched was sold. A whole bunch of other businesses now have closed. Easy Property has kind of been sold about 18 times, I think, for £4.50 probably. The majority of online estate agencies have either closed or they're literally sitting there, on someone's hard drive or on a server, really not doing very much. Doorsteps, never hear about them anymore. 99 Home, Sell My Home, and so on and so on. Settled, remember Settled?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Well, disappeared. They do something else now. The whole landscape of that sector's gone.
Well, it just, in my mind, that whole story just goes to show how difficult it is to understand estate agency as an industry and as a process.
Yes. But look, to be clear, if I'm honest, the whole thing, I believe that the consumer would want a service to sell their home for less money, because that's, as I say, that's the way that the world was going. But obviously for me, selfishly, it was about a check. I'll be under no illusion that this was about, I founded a business. When I founded it in 2009, I had no intention of going out and raising loads of money. I just thought that this could work and it would be a nice lifestyle business like Quirk was. But as we started to expand organically and raise money, and then we had all these competitors, and when Purplebricks launched, which I think was April 2014, maybe 2015, and you could see what they were about to do, it was about really getting big, and either a trade sale or an IPO. My goal then was to take 10 million quid off the table. Why not? And anyone that says that I shouldn't have thought like that, back to our conversation, it's very naive, right? Because if you create yourself an opportunity in a sector that you know very well, and you can 5 years later turn that into a cheque for 10 million quid, show me one person that wouldn't do that in hindsight.
No one begrudges anyone who's made money because they created value and added value and improved people's lives. That's otherwise rock stars wouldn't be rock stars.
Yeah, but I'll be clear, I wasn't there to improve anybody's life apart from my own.
Well, maybe that's where we differ. I'd like to make money.
No, but I'm not Mother Teresa.
No. Just simply people are spending money, give them better value for money. What are you trying to do?
But if you make money as a consequence of saving people money, and of course, but here's the thing: the thing has to have integrity, right? And I was really passionate about the model, my model, the eMoov model, having integrity. So it couldn't be stack them high, ignore customers, and not really worry about the customer service. I was the opposite. I was obsessed with making sure that we got referrals, repeat business, and so on and so forth, and to make sure that the thing worked, because it had to be sustainable. Particularly at the beginning, because I didn't have an exit plan at the beginning. It wasn't about get out in 3 years. It was about let's just grow this as quickly and as big as we can. So anyway, it's but it was about, when I say I'm being slightly facetious about me being completely selfish. No, but wife, kids. It's about supporting your family. Right? That's what my life has always been about.
The very last question is one thing I didn't touch on with BestAgent is that I'm very, very conscious of how most agents feel about what they pay for lead gen businesses and portals, that kind of thing. And in summary, I think that So the charging model we've got is that the price of each lead is the same no matter who you are, no matter what agent. So we're not going to have any commercial contracts. If
you want to grab the lead, you do.
That's the point. And we have a relationship branch to branch. It doesn't matter whether you're part of Connell's or one-man band. It doesn't matter as far as we're concerned. You are a local customer, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because corporates, this is what I think is the big problem. The reason that there's this two-tier industry, 10% of them having 50% of the market, is that corporates, through their very nature, seek to dominate and control wherever they can. That's actually their business, right?
Yeah.
Dominate and control wherever we can and protect our margin, and then ramp it up and ramp it up. Whether you're Google or Rightmove, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
BestAgent is one offering where that can never happen. No rich agent or corporate agent or big agent will ever be able to purchase any advantage at all. Every agent will be presented equally to each client and have an equal opportunity to respond. And so there won't be all pay for this package and get more. No, because that's actually what ends up with movers making a bad choice. So it will remain inclusive, neutral, and impartial. And the pricing structure will be transparent. And whether you are a one-man band with your first instruction or the busiest agent,
it's the same.
It's the same.
Albeit you are charging for a listing, you're not charging for a sale. Correct. So you're charging if someone lists and doesn't sell it.
Correct.
So to your point about only less than half of properties that list with the first agent actually sell, I could throw it back at you that you're actually charging those agents, the majority of agents, something that they're not going to monetize.
Yeah, and what we've already seen is that metric is massively improved. When a seller chooses an agent through BestAgent, the chances are way better than 50%.
Okay.
And we haven't got enough data volumes to show that,
but you're charging not on completion or a successful sale or revenue, you're charging instruction. Yeah.
But a fraction of the price of our competitors. Currently 1/10 will get agent charges. And so far the agents that have been buying these offers have been going, where do I send the money? That's amazing value. That's the cheapest instruction you've ever had.
If there's 10 agents though, can they all buy the lead?
No. Only the instructed agent. We only bill the instructed agent.
What about if it's multi?
I don't know yet. Haven't come across that situation.
Well, yeah.
We would advise movers against doing
that. If the consumer says, I've instructed 3 agents, technically you're charging 50 quid times 3.
Yeah, that hasn't arisen yet. And also I don't know how true that's happened. But I mean, we would
advise. You're rubbing your hands, John.
No, because I'll only be happy if I make money because movers and agents have both had a better experience. Then I will be unapologetic as I buy my multi-million-pound machine or whatever it might be, right? Because I'll have earned it without hurting anybody. So I'm hoping to earn agents' trust as well as movers' trust.
That's important. I think for any supplier now, particularly given the relationship with portals, broken trust between the agent and just about everybody that takes money from them, basically, that broken trust is the biggest problem. Rightmove in particular, have to mend that trust somehow. If they don't, I think Rightmove have got a big problem that they don't see coming.
This is why
there will be kickback from the agency fraternity.
For that exact reason, this is why BestAgent has no investors, no partners. It's me, because I can make decisions that are best for the industry, the community, and the long term, rather than because we're going to meet short-term targets for investors.
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting. We talked about on the market earlier, and they're trying to strive to be seen to be the agent's portal. And I thought there was a real dichotomy actually, where they announced their results to the city recently, and they said, our revenue per agent was up 18%, or whatever it was. So that might not be enough, but roughly it's gone up. And I thought, hang on, you've got to be really careful there, because basically what you're saying to the city is the antithesis of what agents want to hear. Because by going into the corner over there and saying to the city, haven't we done well, it's at the expense of your agency customers. So yes, you're doing well, but you're having to say to agents, we're charging you more money, and that will continue. So I would argue, does that make on the market any better to the agency community than Rightmove? I don't think so, because it's the same model.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You can't have it both ways.
On that happy note, Russell, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate that. It was a great conversation.
Cool, good.
Yeah.